Welcome to the Lift Every Voice podcast, where we explore books by contemplative writers of color. I'm Christine Valters Paintner.
And I'm Claudia Love Mair. We are joined each month by the author of our book club selection. Together, we explore how increasing our diversity of perspectives on contemplative practice can enrich our experience of the Christian mystical tradition.
We encourage you to join us by reading the book, listening to the conversations, and engaging with the reflection questions on our website at abbeyofthearts.com. Welcome, everyone, to our Lift Every Voice book club podcast. And I am delighted, as always, to be joined by my ongoing conversation partner, Claudia Love Mair. And today we welcome Reverend Dr. Roberto Che Espinoza. Sorry,
That's okay.
I had that a moment ago. And we're discussing this beautiful book called Body Becoming, A Path to Our Liberation. And Roberto is a public theologian, pastor, and professor nurturing other possible worlds, believing that public theology is a kind of social healing, which I love that image. Roberto transformed the Activist Theology Project into our collective becoming, a social healing project dedicated to the work of repair. He writes on Substack on our collective becoming, translating theory to action, cultural analysis with a spirit of hope. Beautiful. Welcome, Roberto. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Thank you. It's good to be here with y'all, even though we are mediated by technology.
Yeah. I think our spirits transcend,
Yes.
transcend it all.
Yes.
Well, Claudia Love and I'll go back and forth, but I'll let her begin our conversation with the first question.
All right, Roberto, we just want to get to know you. So could you please share your spiritual journey with us? Like, where have you come from? How did you come to write Body Becoming? And why this book right now?
All good questions. I'm born of a Mexican woman, not of this country, and I share the genetic patterning of white colonizers and indigenous people. And so the very composure of who I am carries histories of violence and liberation, and I think that is such a rich part of my spiritual journey, the everyday struggle of what it means to be mixed race in a polarized country, in a polarized world. I grew up in small Southern Baptist churches. Was radicalized in seminary by orthodoxy, by the teachings of Jesus. Fell in love with the work of contemplation and the vocation of theologian, and that is a big part of my spiritual journey of coming into an awareness that I am gifted to think and make meaning. And of course, this is a very long journey of many decades and traversing the mountain of academia and then being called to serve a church and then coming to recognize that really I'm just called to be with people. And that's really my spiritual journey. I'm called to be with people. I'm a people's theologian, I'm a people's pastor. I I don't I'm not that Protestant to plant a church. But I believe so deeply in the teachings of Jesus that I think community and togetherness is really the only way forward in a polarized world. And so really at this point with that book, which was my second book, and it was really a love letter to my then partner. We're married now. And it was an acknowledgement that my whole journey in becoming an academic and pursuing this dream that my mom had told me that education was my way out, that whole process had cut me up into little pieces and fragmented me. And so this book was an attempt to try to restory myself and try to put myself back together. Um, I don't know if I accomplished that, but it felt good to write it and get it out and to invite other people to consider the work of repairing ourselves and becoming more deeply embodied as a spiritual practice. And this has kind of taken me, I mean, I feel like I have a lot of conversations about this book and it keeps taking me deeper into my spiritual journey of repair. So that's a little bit about me. I, and why this book? I mean, I felt I felt like I feel like our institutions are separating us. And I wanted to write a book and really attune ourselves to the urgency of right now. And
Mm,
that right now what we need is to turn toward another and to turn toward ourselves. Now that book was written in 2020, so obviously, I'm having these thoughts way ahead of what society is able to contain, right? And so I consider that a gift that I learned from Gloria Anzaldúa, who taught the work of spiritual activism and all things are connected. So that's a little bit about my spiritual journey and maybe why I wrote that book, and maybe there are some tangents there that y'all can pick up.
That's really beautiful. I've always heard that a theologian is one who lays his head on the bosom of Jesus. And it seems like not only do you have your head on Jesus's bosom, but your hand is outstretched towards
Yeah.
your fellow humans.
Yeah.
Just lovely.
Yes. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to be than to follow, a Jewish teacher. It's embodied wisdom.
Hmm. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. And even in your bio, that line about public theology being a kind of social healing, uh, I think I'm gonna need to like process that for myself for a while because I have an academic background in theology too, and I left academia because I just found it kind of suffocating.
yeah.
And yeah, that there's something really beautiful about what you're doing that I really appreciate. And this book, I want to go I want to start first by going right to the pain
Yeah.
because Claudia Love and I both have chronic illness, chronic pain, all that, and it significantly affects our lives and the way we're in our bodies. And um, and I think, yeah, what you're writing here is such a powerful way of inviting people into that relationship. So how do you yeah, so tell us more about pain because you talk about it as a universal human experience, which of course it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit more about um, how do we move into this deeper relationship with our bodies when we're often beset by relentless pain sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so you're catching me on a day where my wife suffered um, another pain attack and
Mm,
was up until 4 a.m. this morning. We're on Eastern time. And my wife is a former dancer and dance educator and somatic facilitator. And in real time, I'm watching her body break down.
Mm,
mm,
And I'm watching the emergence of disability.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Um, as a person who lives with severe anxiety and a panic disorder after being targeted for the past 6 years, I've lived with chronic nausea.
Mhm,
People on the spectrum often have some kind of digestive issue that is related to anxiety. So we both uh, navigate ability and disability on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Um, I turn to cannabis as a way to treat my anxiety and the nausea. Um, and it seems counterintuitive, but there have been several instances where I have been so nauseous, and my wife says, just have some indica, and that will calm your body, and it works. And I know it's taboo, and maybe your listeners will change their opinion about me, but I mention this because I believe in building in public and being transparent.
Yeah.
And I I I mean, let me say this. I I fled my home in 2023, Nashville, Tennessee, after being targeted for 6 years. My wife and I fled for sanctuary in New York. And I am a trans refugee. We are queer refugees trying to find sanctuary. So we're in a new place in a very rural area, where in the poorest county in New York.
Mm.
And so we had to really get creative on how we care for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we essentially turned to agriculture. Agriculture is a second economic producer in New York.
Mm.
So we have invested in a CSA, and that's how we manage our pain, by eating fresh veggies. Um, we buy from a local farm because I need meat to ground myself. And we really are using food and cannabis as a way to control chronic pain and my nausea.
Mhm.
And it may seem silly or campy, but these are like fundamental things that people need to feel safe and secure.
Yeah.
And so if we can have an awareness of ourselves and the deep pain that we embody, maybe then we can become aware of the greater pain that exists in the world. And one of the ways that we are learning how to become aware of this is through sharing meals with one another
Yeah.
and learning the practice of taking care of self while we take care of other. And then when the pain emerges, it's distributed care. We had to call somebody last night to come over. Um, and so how the work of becoming attuned and aware of our individual pain and our collective pain is something that is necessary right now, because unfortunately we seem to have collective amnesia after 2020. And if we are not ready to name the rupture that has separated all of us, I don't know that we're going to be able to be honest about the pain that we embody.
Yeah. Yeah. I Yeah, there's so much that's profound about that. And I so value that this book comes out of your own journey of wrestling, which you're very honest about in the book in really beautiful ways. And I love this, this deep connection between the individual pain and healing and then the collective pain and healing, which I think a lot of us are taught, to deny the pain that we're experiencing.
Right,
And so if we never get in touch with that pain, how are we ever gonna,
right.
as you say, learn that compassion for one another and move into that
Yeah,
space
and
together?
one of the things that I'm remembering is the etymological root for the word womb and compassion.
Mm,
They share a root, and
mhm,
womb is making space for someone else.
mm. Yeah,
How do we make space for each other, for ourselves and each other? And compassion, remember the Latin root for compassion is just to suffer with.
yeah,
So, are we able to suffer with ourselves and one another for another possible world? If we cannot name the prison in which we are living, in which we have all been tethered, I don't know that we can really free ourselves.
Yeah.
And some of that is because we want comfort and we want to not feel, we want to numb ourselves. Look at addiction rates in this country. You know, so there are all these ways that we run away from the pain.
Yeah.
And what I've decided to do is to spend the rest of my days repairing myself to repair the world, because I think that's what Jesus was doing.
Mm. Yeah.
And so I wrote this book as a gesture to say, hey, look, I am deeply separated. I am disconnected from myself. I'm a floating head, did a TED talk about it. And I am committed to suturing the wounds of myself so that I can participate in building the world that I want. And the
Mm.
world that we all long for.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for that so much. Mm.
I feel so emotional by those beautiful words that you just shared, because my heart is right there with you. You know, I've always been a person that was very love forward, and it's looking um like that Dostoevsky quote, um, real love is a harsh and beautiful thing compared to love and dreams.
Yeah.
And before I ask the question that's related to Christine's question, I do want to say we have such a generous community here. And we've been doing Lift Every Voice. Is this our third year,
I think
Christine?
it might even be our fourth.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So these years we've been talking to people from marginalized communities, people of color, and what we've learned is that we're all returning to the ways of our grandmothers.
Yes.
We're all
Yes.
returning to their medicine
Yes.
and even to their magic.
Yes.
And you're at home with
Yeah.
um we are fans
Yeah.
of you using whatever medication is
Thank you.
working for you. So please be assured
Thank
of
you.
what I wanted to ask, you mentioned, hang on, I gotta find the right question.
Mhm.
Mentioned metabolizing physical pain to become more fully embodied, and what that healing process can look like individually and collectively. So can you talk to us about how does pain metabolize?
Yeah, I think we need to contextualize this, because trauma decontextualized can look lots of different ways, right? Um, I'll share a story. Uh, before we went down, before lockdown happened, and before the height of the pandemic, I was suffering from a condition called adenomyosis, and it had me in bed for hours. And there was this kind of moment of recognition that I had to let my body have its process.
Yeah.
And we know that capitalism makes us sick. We know that the publish or perish mentality is has spread in every institution. And when I was struck with this condition, um, I had to figure out how to develop a different kind of relationship with my body, because I needed to talk to myself. Because I need, you know, I felt like my body was revolting in pain.
Mhm.
And, you know, I like to say, well, I'm allergic to white supremacy. And so my body reacts in lots of different ways. And I think that's true. I think oppression manifests in certain ways. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, I at the time was on the road 300 days a year. sleeping in hotels or couches or spare bedrooms. And, I think my body was revolting and saying, hey, look, if you can't be with us now, how are you going to live your purpose? And it took me many years to learn this lesson.
Mm.
And I feel like right now I'm in a place where I can kind of reflect on this and talk about what I had to do to metabolize my pain was first develop an awareness that my body was even in pain. So many of us are numb to the pain that we feel because the world around us silences our intuition
Yeah.
and polices out our imagination. So reconnecting with ourselves and metabolizing the pain really is woven together, because if we are unable to become aware of ourselves and our pain, how might we metabolize the pain? That requires relationship. And I think what I'm learning is people prefer transactions over relationship. And I'm tired of that because it transactions are is what is hurting us right now. It's not business as usual. We have to tend to ourselves so that we can tend to each other. I mean, it's like the womanists say, tend to your garden.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my garden right here is in my home, and if I can't live my purpose at home, how in the hell am I going to live it in the streets?
Mhm.
Facts.
So I got to tend to myself and tend to my partner and to my 4 cats.
Yeah.
Amen to that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really beautiful. Yeah, there's just something about, I think what you touched on about the lack of awareness around our pain and the relational thing, because there's so much, yeah, it's so reinforced that we are on our own, that we,
Yeah,
we have to do it all by ourselves. That individualism is so toxic and pernicious.
yeah.
Um, But I actually want to kind of swing to the other direction now for a moment, because the pain is obviously a very real part of our human experience, but also is play and pleasure, which you also talk about in your book really beautifully. And you talk about play as setting things in motion to become, which was such a great image. So tell us more about play and pleasure, and particularly in connection to this idea of body becoming.
So I'm still on this journey. Okay, I've
Mhm.
not arrived, and remember, this is not about having a destination
Yeah.
or arriving anywhere, right? We will be fighting white supremacy, racism, poverty for the rest of our lives. Play and pleasure have got to be in the game.
Yeah.
We cannot do life if we cannot return to awe and wonder, and I think that begins in play.
Yeah.
So, uh, food, I love to cook. Um, I had a 3-day relationship with a brisket that I smoked.
I-
Um, 25. I fed 25 people with my brown sugar coffee roasted brisket. So yeah, pleasure in food. We make a lot of mocktails. I will make a cocktail if people want it, but we don't drink a lot. It's bad for you, it's poison. Just like everything else. But food and music and dance and art and magic.
Magic.
Mhm.
We
Yeah.
we have to return to awe and wonder. We are in the future. We are making the future. And we
Yeah.
get to make the future how we want to make it. And so can we please recover the magic?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, we can. You know, y'all, sometimes I feel like because of everything that's happening in 45, 47's administration, especially here in the United States, that people like us with hearts like ours have jumped a timeline and arrived in, I know that sounds weird, jumped a timeline and arrived in a beautiful future
Yeah.
that we're forging.
Yeah.
Um, and I think everything seems to be accelerating,
Yeah.
like high velocity fuckery
Yeah.
and spirituality,
Right.
all at once. And I'm just I'm kind of in awe of everything that's happening. And just very quickly, what's happening in my body is, like I said, I feel like I've jumped this timeline.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I became allergic to pain medicine that I had been taking for quite a long time. Two different pain medicines. Soon as I stopped taking them, I got better. Like I can walk up. I was walking with the cane. The doctor said you're going to walk with the cane for the rest of your life. And then suddenly I wasn't.
Yeah.
Suddenly walking like a boss,
Yeah.
going back to church. And I had left church years ago,
Yeah.
ready to move forward in welcoming the stranger because so
Yeah.
many of us are disconnected from
Right.
love. And this is the time
Now
to
be
bring
careful because I did that. I welcomed the stranger that got me booted out of the church. So just be careful.
well, this particular pastor, he's all about that life. He's got a trans daughter. The church is full of people who are disabled,
Yeah.
intellectually challenged. It's just lovely. And
That is the way it should be.
exactly.
Instead of the I mean, we we are animals and we act like animals and we because of patriarchy, we believe in dividing and conquering. And that is colonial logic that is violent. And if we can, I'm reminded of the the hospital in France that Felix Guattari worked in where nobody was medicated but everyone was cared for.
Hmm.
That's the kind of medicine we need right now. Let's not use systems of power to organize ourselves. Let's use relationship to organize this new body that is becoming.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so beautiful. Hmm. Claudia Love, I'm so immersed in the conversation, I've lost track of where we are, which I love. I love.
Like, what? Let's just ask a question then. This disconnection that so many of us feel that could manifest as eating disorders, body dysmorphia, hypersexuality, drug addiction. I lost my own son to a drug overdose. He was 32 years old, brilliant, beautiful mind, but a lot of emotional pain. There are so many ways that we disconnect
Yeah,
who we are from that animal.
right,
My cats are chill.
right,
They eat, they drink, they lay on the bed.
right. We can learn a lot from cats.
And
Exactly.
dogs, and dogs. Some of us are
Yes,
dog people.
yes, yeah. I love dogs too. I just happen to live with cats, but yeah, we can learn a lot from animals. I mean, I'm becoming a little bit like St. Francis here in Western New York, where I feed the birds and my first morning smoke is an indigenous practice where I connect with the divine and with all living beings and ask the trees to be with me. I talk to the trees as my form of prayer. And really when we return to the radical interconnectedness of all things, that intelligence does come from dogs and cats and birds and groundhogs and fish, when we really take hold that creation is God's first revelation,
Yeah.
maybe then we'll be able to turn toward the work of repair.
Yeah. Yeah, you have a beautiful little section about talking about God in motion, and relationship is in all things and willing all things to come to life. And then you say, in the language of the lens of animism, it's the cognization and awareness that all things are endowed with spirit and life. So I loved that image of, how do we best cooperate then with that divine
Right.
being that's already at work in all of those beings and aspects and of creation
Yeah.
to help. So again, like that relational aspect, it's not just obviously between human beings. And that's where the empowerment and the liberation can come from, right? Is that heart, that relationship, and that partnering with the divine present in
Yes.
everything. Because I
Yes.
think once you disconnect that, right, you lose it.
Well, and I think we're witnessing that.
Mhm.
We're witnessing the moral devastation of disconnection.
Yep. Yes. 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 I want to put that in like
Mm.
big letters on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hmm.
Is
I
it
w-
my turn?
what?
I said, is it my turn? I'm the Holy Ghost is moving.
You're dancing between the worlds, Claudia. I think we all are.
Well, that's really the work, right? To
Yeah.
find the liminal spaces where we thrive. And for me, I'm learning that institutional life is not where I thrive.
Yeah.
And I prefer the bleeding edges, the bleeding periphery of empire. Um, and, as my teacher says, if the institutionality of the thing is rotten, the fruit is too.
Yeah.
And I think we're witnessing a lot of the rottenness right now. And
Yes.
when we have the confidence to jump the timeline, and confidence, remember, is just courage plus action. But
Mm,
when we have the confidence to jump the timeline and begin to reclaim magic, awe, and wonder and
yeah.
nurture the wisdom economy, that's when we do the real work of
Mhm.
repair. And I think that's what Jesus was about. A, 91% of Jesus' time was spent in being, just being.
Yeah.
I mean, we could talk about ontology and everything like that. Um, but our beingness,
Mhm.
are we able to be with ourselves and with each other? Only 9% of the life of Jesus was spent in action.
Mm, yeah.
And so I think the lesson there for us is, how do we cultivate presence for self and other?
Yeah.
We have to be rooted in the work of repair.
Yeah.
And if we can't do it at home, I mean, my thing was, if we can't do it in the church, where can we do it? Well, I learned my lesson there. So now if I can't do it at home, where can I do it? Right?
Yeah.
So small is all. We've gotten too big for ourselves.
Yeah.
So can you live your purpose at home? Can you cultivate presence and self-awareness at home so that you can live it out in the streets?
Yeah. Yeah. I love the humility of that because I think there's so much aggrandizement of like vocation and calling that makes it become, yeah, something that loses touch with the holy ordinary and
Right.
those ways that God is pulsing through every moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to go back for a moment to when you were talking about liminal spaces, because I love thresholds and liminal
Yeah.
space. And you talked about being in the book about being transgender as being a threshold being, which I love that image because I've often thought of um, as someone with chronic illness and disability as being someone who lives on the threshold, and how I talk about I have a horizontal perspective to life because I'm not vertical as
Right.
often as other people. And I know you have other, so, your kind of ethnic identity, puts you in that liminal space as well. And when you talked about the autism, I got that sense too. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit more about the gifts of being able to embrace our liminality. And because I think it feels like an important, because that's not certainly validated in the
Right.
dominant culture.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, this love letter that I've written to my now wife on embodiment is really an indictment of dominant culture
Yeah.
and what dominant culture has created. And yeah, the Nepantla space, the liminal space, is space that is painful, and also it is space where people thrive. And I mean, I often, back when I was in the height of being targeted, um, I would have to take a siesta every day for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So I slept a lot in those 6 years, and didn't know what else to do but just go to sleep.
Yeah.
Um, and for me, dreams have meaning for the spirit world and whatnot. Um, and I had to like lean in
Mm-hmm.
to the dream world and magic. I I I put obsidian near my bed and in the figure of jaguars for protection.
Mm.
Um, because in in the liminality, something was emerging,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I think something still is emerging, and I am still living in this in between space,
Yeah.
and I don't always know how to articulate it.
Yeah.
Um, because I live with so much anxiety and panic, I smoke a lot, and so I'm living in that liminal space more often out of choice
Mm-hmm.
because it keeps me alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and in the Irish tradition, the other world is the world behind the world. And it is the source of like creative vitality. It is the source of the imagination and all those ideas. And I think, as you said before, our imagination has been so thwarted by
Yeah,
capitalism and all the powers that be, that it's like that. I love that act. I love that, napping as an act of resistance. Claudia Love and I are big fans of rest as
yeah,
resistance,
yeah,
but just, and what you were saying, that there's pain in the liminal space, but there's also thriving, and
yeah,
how we need that courage that you're also
yeah,
talking about to be
yeah,
able to step into the liminality um and reap both, be able to be present to the pain, and also be able to bring forth all of the thriving and the gifts that come.
yeah. And I just want to normalize um turbulence.
Mhm.
That is a normal part of life. Chaos,
Yeah.
turbulence, stress. Those are all things that are created by hegemonic systems that impact all of us. And I don't think we need to grow a set of balls to be better people. I think what we need is tenderness and generativity
Yeah.
and awe, wonder, and magic. And when we lean in to those liminal spaces, we essentially step into the poetics of becoming.
Beautiful. Yeah. Love it. Yes. Thank you so much for that. I love it.
I may, I want to go back to magic, awe, and wonder.
Yeah.
Um, I'm I've returned to the spirituality of my ancestors, um, who during the time of chattel slavery, they their spiritual practices had this element of magic, of medicine,
Yeah,
and just the mundane.
right,
And the thing about colonizers is the first thing they want to do is demonize indigenous practices
right,
and spirituality.
right.
And to hear that you have the crystals by your bed that you are, like I've got all kind of spiritual protection on.
Right.
Like,
That
crosses.
shit is real. That shit is real. You
Exactly,
gotta protect yourself.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The protection work is so important. And you're talking about a community of enslaved people who the only power they had was God
Right.
and their own spiritual practices that they knew worked.
Right.
So I feel so blessed that, you know, we get to have this conversation where the word magic comes up and I don't feel like I have to hide,
Yeah.
that I do protection work, that I connect with ancestors every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
I got crystals right here, ancestor altar right there,
Yeah.
body armor,
Yeah.
and was at my back. And I just this has been such we've completely abandoned the questions. This has been such a special conversation.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that you are living your truth as best you can. I'm on some kind of spectrum. It's so hard for Black women to be diagnosed,
Right.
but I believe I'm ADHD, and I have a daughter on the spectrum, and I know there is a genetic component.
Right.
And so to navigate, the natural and the spiritual with our neurodivergent superpowers,
Right.
uh, it's it's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild, and there are so few places where I have felt free to be able to speak on these things. So I'm grateful to you both for this very special conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna wrap it up there because I feel like I could go on for probably another hour, but I think that's enough for now, and I kind of want to just marinate in all of that goodness.
Yeah.
So I really so appreciate you, Roberto, and all the work that you've been doing and that you continue to do, and your humility and transparency, all such beautiful gifts to all of us. So I'm
Thank you.
grateful to you. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for this. Yeah.